soft approach to the election results that are going to be coming in. And I'm sure the various parties, I'm sure the NPP would have its own election watch going on, and the NDC would also have theirs, the PPP and the other minority parties will be having theirs. We have decided to gather here under the auspices of the Institute of Economic Affairs to have our own special evening. So to get the evening going, I'm going to call on Jean Mensah. Let's welcome her with a round of applause. She's going to give us the welcome address.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen.
Let me raise up the microphone a bit for you. Okay. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Institute of Economic Affairs, the IEA, I welcome you to the opening night of our Election Watch series. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jean Mensah. I'm the Executive Director of the IEA. Today, many of the 14.5 million qualified voters or in our electoral roll went to the polling stations to choose between 1,332 prospective parliamentarians and 8 presidential candidates. It was an exercise of their franchise and an affirmation of their citizenship. By tomorrow evening, it will be clear who would sit in the 275-seater parliament and who would be president, barring a second round of voting. But that is only part of the story. Elections everywhere, distinguished guests, give deep and interesting insights into the political, social, and economic soul of the nation. It is for this reason that the IEA has put together the Election Watch series to provide an independent and interesting analysis of the results as they come in, so as to place issues like the gender dimension, swing regions, flashpoints, and one-term MPs and skirt and blouse voting in historical perspective. As Ghana's leading public policy think tank, we hope that this event would be a subtle but effective intervention to help police the ballots, calm down tensions, and provide a one-stop shop for an independent analysis of the process. Distinguished guests, we are aware that the anticipation is high, but we urge all of you to relax, enjoy the evening, and sharpen your perspectives. On behalf of the IEA, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. May God bless us all, and may democracy be the ultimate winner in this year's election. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jean Mensah, Executive Director of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Okay, so as you heard, we're going to be having a special event tonight. And we made sure that we didn't leave you out of all that's going on. There's a lot going on, and I'm going to, pretty shortly, I'm going to be giving you, I'm going to give you a brief about what's been happening. Okay, the elections, we all voted today, 14.5 million. Not everybody else voted, and in fact, some people haven't voted, and those people were told. There have been a few hitches here and there. It has to do with the verification machines. Some people go to the verification machines. They go into the process and they put their fingers on it and it doesn't recognize them. There have been various reasons that have been assigned as to why they've not been recognized. But what has emerged is that the Electoral Commission has decided that for those areas where the verification machines delayed, and so a lot of the people are unable to vote as at now, they could close the polls, they could seal the ballot. In fact, the ballot boxes are already sealed, and so they could take them away with the seals already placed on them. They will seal them, and then they can come and continue tomorrow. Now, those areas where the verification machines didn't come at all, and there were areas like that, they waited and waited and never came, they're going to be starting everything tomorrow. So these are the indications, or these are the rules, or the directives that the Electoral Commission has announced within the last hour. And the Electoral Commission spoke to Joy News. And for your information, we're going to be screening, once the results start coming in, we're going to be screening them here. We're going to put them right here so you can get to see. We're making sure that you don't lose out at all whilst you're here this evening. So next up, we're going to be having an analyst who's going to be taking us and guiding us through this whole evening. As the results come in, he's going to help us with his analysis. In fact, he has done a lot of work and he has studied the trends over a long time, and so he's very, very knowledgeable. I mean, he's taking it as his job to get to study the trends. And so tonight he's going to be guiding us to do some independent analysis. He is in the person of Alex Frimpong. He's a senior lecturer in political science at the University of Ghana, Legon. He teaches electoral politics and democracy in Ghana at the undergraduate level, and democracy and governance in Africa at the graduate level. And just to let you know that he's done quite a lot of work and he's very well placed to do this. He has this book out, Electoral Politics in Ghana's Fourth Republic in the Context of Post-Cold War Africa. So he's already done his work. So most of the things he's going to be saying here are stuff that he knows already. He doesn't have to look into a book to tell us all that. So we'll just go straight out to Alex Frimpong, and let's have a warm round of applause to welcome him. He's already at the podium, but just so he can take it away.
Thank you, Israel. Welcome, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I wish to thank IEA for this opportunity to talk about elections in Ghana. By way of introduction, I would say that we have had a very long history as far as national elections were concerned. We were lucky to have 3 elections before independence. Then in our first, second, and third republics, there were 4 elections. As we are aware, we already have 5 elections in the Fourth Republic, and today's make the 6th. We remember in 1992, the first presidential election was acrimonious, and that resulted in the opposition boycotting the parliamentary elections. But since then, we have traveled far. Through the efforts of IPAC, consensus has been built on electoral issues, and so the subsequent 4 elections have been generally acceptable. We are aware that we have had 2 alternations. In 2000 from NDC to MPP, and in 2008 from MPP back to NDC. We are also aware that on those 2 occasions, we ran into runoffs. There were no deciders in the first round, and we had to go into the second. And in fact, in the case of 2008, we had, in quotes, a 3rd round. That was the tiebreaker. It's also of interest to note that in the 5 elections we have had so far, the party which wins the presidency goes on to win the parliamentary majority. Each of these elections has come with its own challenges. And like Israel said, we are having our own challenges for today's own new ones. But the good thing is that we have survived thus far. And we are among a very few in Africa who has done 6 elections since the 1990s.
Very few.
And in fact, the true turnover that we had in 2000 and 2008, in electoral terms, is said to be a true turnover test. And for Samuel Huntington, if you have two turnover tests, you have reached democratic consolidation. But whether we have reached there is another question, because there must be more to democratic consolidation than mere electoral turnovers. As we await the election results today, we want to look at these 5 elections, reflect on the journey so far, identify trends, examine interesting scenarios of the past, and make some projections. For lack of time, we are focusing on presidential elections. But I believe we will have time to discuss some of the interesting parliamentary scenarios, like constituencies which every time produce a new MP, like some MPs who are going for a 6th term. They have been described as the Mugabes of Parliament and so on. We will be talking about all of them. But let me crave your indulgence, and let's briefly look at 1979. It was the first time that we have presidential elections similar to the one we have in the 4th Republic. And there are so many precedents that were set and some lessons to be learned. There were 10 contestants in that race, and that is unprecedented. We very nearly broke that record, but a number of them were disqualified this year. Interestingly also, there were 4 independent presidential candidates. In the 4th Republic until 2008, there were no independent candidates. And you can find the list of them on the screens. But at the end of it, there was no first round winner. So a runoff is another precedent. And the runoff was between People's National Party's Hilary Liman and Popular Front Party's Victor Owusu. And the outcome of the runoff was most interesting. Liman, from the northern part of the country, and politically virtually unknown, defeated the veteran politician Victor Owusu in the runoff by 62% to 38%. And in constituency terms, Liman got 105 constituencies and Victor only 35. Some of the good things, I've mentioned some already about the 79. It may interest you to know that in that election, we have the first presidential running mate, Christian Deborah, a military nurse. People don't tend to forget about her. He was a candidate for RP Bafo, an independent candidate. He was a running mate for him. It is of interest to note that this idea of regional balancing of the tickets, north-south ticket balancing and so on, began. Liman from the north chose Degav Johnson from Central. Owusu chose Yakubu Tale from Dagbon area, Northern. And it may interest you to know that William Oforiatta chose Ibrahim Idrisu Mahama. And Idrisu Mahama is the husband of the former Attorney General, Mrs. Betty Maud Idrisu.
And then that's something else I got to pick up when we're having our interactions. It just goes to tell you how long he's been around. I mean, he's been a politician for a very, very long time, to the extent that he's run for a vice presidency at some point in time.
And the party he ran for at that time was of the Dankwa Buzaist tradition.
Interesting.
One other interesting thing about 79 was that the elections were generally said to be free and fair, but they were held under unfavorable conditions, right in the middle of the June 4th revolution. One other interesting thing was that the Dankwa Buzaist tradition went into that election with a divided front between the Popular Front Party and the United National Convention, UNC. And one lesson which it has taught us is that going into an election with a divided front is always a recipe for failure. The PFP, led by Victor Usu, because it was largely the successor of the Buzaist regime, felt they were virtually going to complete an unfinished business. They were very complacent, and the Ghanaians showed them a lesson. Consequently, we have been doing that. In 2000, when NDC felt that after 2 elections they were going to make the 3rd, we showed them. In 2008, MPP felt it was a done deal, but it was never to be. The 1992 presidential election itself came with its own precedents. This time, parliamentary and presidential elections were to be held separately. For the first time in the country's history, the outgoing military junta metamorphosed into a political party. The PNDC metamorphosed into NDC. That is PNDC minus P. The incumbent head of state himself contested. And in fact, he contested with the support of a three-party alliance, NDC, NCP, IGRE, whom they describe as Progressive Alliance. Its presidential ticket itself was two-party, in the sense that Lawrence was from the NDC and his running mate, Aka, from NCP. It turned out to be a marriage of inconvenience. Unfortunately for the Nkrumahs, who have united under Liman to win 79, they entered this battle broken up into 4 groups, and up to today, they have never gotten united. The results were as follows. J.J. Lawrence, the NDC and its allies, won clearly with 58.3. They had majority in 9 regions, and in terms of constituencies, 152 out of the 200 constituencies. Adubuahin, leading the MPP, got 30.4, won only in Ashanti region, and in terms of constituencies, 43. Ex-President Liman, who was now leading the PNC, made only 6.7% nationwide, but he got majority in 5 of the constituencies. The 2 others, the 2 also ran. Kwabena Dakun got 2.8, and the commander, Emmanuel Erskine, was defeated by his flight lieutenant. He got only 1.8. And there is that story that even in his own polling station where he voted, he got 0.
And just to move on from that point, you talked about the fact that much earlier on, you brought in the bit about the fact that we used to vote on 2 separate days. So we had the presidential votes on one day, and then another time we held the parliamentary, except that this time we've put the 2 together. Yeah. Can you tell us at what point did we move, or why we had to move from the voting on 2 days to voting on 1 day?
Okay, you remember we have made 1 day in 79. In 1992, we decided to make it separate days, and it came with its own serious problems. The fact that the opposition, not happy with the presidential results, boycotted it. So in the course of the 4 years before 96, the discussions among AIPAC agreed that to avoid such a problem, we should go back to a single day.
Okay.
And that is what it has been since then.
And I think one other important point that should come out of the 1992 election is the fact that they produced the Stolen Verdict, that book,
Yes.
called the Stolen Verdict.
When the opposition boycotted, they used that as a justification, talking about electoral malpractices in 100 of the 200 constituencies. The 1992 regional distribution of votes should come out for you in colors. By 1996, there has been a lot of electoral reforms, like I've said. But what was most interesting about 96 was the alliances. The Progressive Alliance was already there, but there were some changes. Aka, as vice president, and his group has left, and they have teamed up to form another Nkrumah's party called the PCP. This time, the PCP was going to form an alliance with its traditional political foe, the NPP, the Dankwa Buzia tradition, and the Nkrumah's tradition has been the traditional political foes. But interestingly, they formed a common front against a common enemy. And that was the NDC and its allies. In that election, even though the PCP was largely made up of the Nkrumah's groups, the PNC stayed out. So we had only 3 presidential candidates. Lawrence for the Progressive Alliance, with a new running mate, J.E.A. Mills, whose role in presidential politics is very well known. The Great Alliance had Kufuor, J.A. Kufuor, with the same sitting vice president, Aka. So he made history as a vice president of the ruling alliance, and at the same time, the running mate of an opposition alliance. It is one history which we may not find elsewhere. As the results came in, Lawrence and his Progressive Alliance got 57.4, 1 in 9 regions. So it was as very close to the 92 elections as it were. So perhaps it was a justification that Lawrence had won squarely in the first election. Kufuor, now the candidate for the Progressive Alliance, topped up to 39.6%, but he still won in the Ashanti region alone with 63 constituencies. Mahama made up the remaining 3. There also, there is that important fact that across the 5 elections, the NDC and the MPP will virtually always get 90% or more. But of interest here is that Lawrence performed better in Upper East and Upper West this time. In 92, Liman took off some of his votes. But now that Liman was not contesting, Lawrence's votes in Upper East and Upper West went up. But it fell drastically in Central region. When we come to swing votes, Central region is a very crucial one. And we will talk more about that. Kufuor, on his part, did best in Central region and Western region. Historically, those 2 regions have been Nkrumahist, and the PCP contributed. But in 96 too, there was this phenomenon of ticket splitting, where voters decide to vote for the president in one, the presidential candidate of a particular party, and vote for the parliamentary candidate of another. In local parlance, we call that skirt and blouse. It has been popular even under Liman.
And I think we should find a way of, getting skirt and blouse, or copyrighting the phrase skirt and blouse, because you call it what? Ticket splitting.
Ticket splitting.
Okay, but over here in Ghana we call it skirt and blouse, and it's only peculiar to Ghana, because I remember recently during the U.S. elections, I was with a group of West Africans who were covering, and including the State Department officials I was with, and I came up with this phrase, skirt and blouse, and it was very, very alien to them. But apparently it's called skirt and blouse. Ticket